Welcome to today's webinar entitled Uncover Hidden Threats at Network Speed, the Power of NDR for Enterprise Security. I am Mark and I'm with Stamus Networks. I'll be your host and moderator today. We've got a great program for you here. A couple of housekeeping notes. All attendees will receive a copy of this presentation and get access to the recording of the entire webinar. We'll be sending that to the email address you registered with. If you have any questions you want to ask our presenters, please enter them in the question dialog box at the bottom of your Zoom console. And we'll do our best to get through all your questions at the end. We may or may not answer the questions in the middle of the presentation, but we will certainly reserve time at the end for the questions. And if we don't get to answer all of them, we will ask the presenters to answer them in writing, and we will distribute those in the follow-up email. Okay, so here's what our presenters are going to be covering today. I won't read all this, but we will start with some of the critical challenges that security practitioners are facing today. And we will end with a live demonstration of clear NDR and some of the key takeaways. We do have some additional resources that we will share at the end. Those will be included in the presentation that we share with you also. Okay, so I'd like to introduce our two presenters. First, we've got Nadeem Zahid. Nadeem is the Chief Operating Officer at NEOX Networks. Welcome, Nadeem.
Hello, everyone.
And next, we've got Phil Owens, who's the Vice President of Customer Solutions at Stamus Networks. Hi,
Howdy,
Phil.
everyone. How
All
you
right,
doing?
thank you. So they're going to be sharing the presentation duties today, and I think you're in for a great one. So without further ado, I'd like to pass the baton over to Phil.
Excellent. Thanks a lot, Mark. Just also from a housekeeping perspective, Mark is running the slide deck, so you may hear me say next slide occasionally. So just so that you know that. And we're going to start off with some of the critical challenges in modern threats, especially in a hybrid world, where you got cloud and on-prem solutions and things like that that are going on. We in the cybersecurity space, we've been talking about attackers becoming more sophisticated, every year, right? So that happens all the time. But now with AI-driven cyber threats, where the attackers actually have some abilities to use large language models to build out their phishing emails, it's becoming much more sophisticated and much harder for our users to understand what it is they're looking at. So we have, AI-driven cyber threats, the double extortion ransom tactics, basically ransomware tactics, where not only are they trying to encrypt the network so that they can get paid, they steal the data first, then encrypt the network and try to get paid twice. So something that's been happening throughout the last 18 months or so. And then the cyber chain attacks, where you use a watering hole. The attacker may be using a watering hole for one of your third-party vendors and trying to get into there to get to your network. Something that's been in the news recent. And then advanced persistent threat. These are state actors or large organizations that are really trying to bypass traditional defenses. And so what that means is that they buy copies of the same stuff that you have in order to be able to try to circumvent some of your defenses, where they will have their own copies of those things to be able to try to work to circumvent. So very advanced type of threat actors. Next. We've also noticed that the attack surface is expanding, and if you've seen over the last couple of years, we've seen attacks that have been originating not at the endpoints that we typically think about, like PCs and servers getting hacked, those types of things. But what we're starting to see is, bring your own devices causing threats on the network, Internet of Things, where there is an OS inside those light bulbs or the hubs of those light bulbs and things like that that can be attacked. Uh, Network devices has been a really big attack surface over the last 18 months to a couple of years, where we've seen many different routers, switches, firewalls getting impacted as the beachhead of an attack. We also have operational technology, medical devices. In the medical device realms, it may not be just medical devices, but any devices that are regulated, so that the operating system can only be updated when the regulations say it can be updated, and the software that can be put on them is only the software that the regulations allow. And then we have, especially in the education sector, Google Chromebooks that are all over the place, which it's really hard to just get an agent on any of these devices, right? So these devices typically go agentless, and there needs to be some way to be able to address that. So the next piece of data that I want to talk about is some of the security challenges that you may be impacting you, I should say, right? Alert overload. This is something that goes along, especially with legacy IDS products, some first-gen AI anomaly detection, right? Just really causes way too many alerts for a SOC analyst to be able to take care of, right? The impacts of this are attacks take too long to detect, or missed entirely, just because there's just way too many alerts from the different platforms that you're looking at trying to use for your security stack. Inefficient attack visibility. So this goes back to maybe you have some cloud workflows that just aren't being covered by traditional your traditional network stack, or places like I'd mentioned before where you have agentless systems that aren't being able to pull back data into your SIM. So you're kind of blind to those locations, and really this um, this causes a lot of critical attacks to potentially be missed if you're not able to actually visually see what's going on in these different locations. Some of the things that we've noticed is a lot of vendors, in moving to AI, they've started to make these changes in such a way that there's a black box of detection. And this doesn't just mean AI vendors as well, just AI vendors. This could be anyone who decides that the data that they're delivering is their proprietary information. And so what ends up happening is that you don't have a good context of, or the full story of what it is that you're looking at, being able to see where the attack took place and how to be able to mitigate that attack from a security analyst perspective. Having the full story really helps in your response. So this really delays, and a lot of times can delay the assessment and the response of what it is that you're looking at, because you don't know why it's happening. And then finally, on this slide, we have increased attack velocity, right? With the attackers using AI, as was mentioned before, they're able to actually create exploits and other types of mechanisms in order to do the attack, and they are able to do that way more rapidly than in the past, with the help of their tools that are delivering information to them. So this really can inflict damage before you even know that it's happened. Next slide. So what we like to say is that the network is the source of truth. And this goes back to the fact that, we have a lot of hosts that are not observable just with other types of tools. So the network has all of the data that is moving within your organization. We can actually monitor cloud and on-prem workflows, and we'll get into that a little bit more as we start talking about the combination of the solutions with Nadeem and myself. There is an impartial view of all host communications, right? Whether it's good, bad, or indifferent, we're seeing it all, and therefore we're able to make those determinations and build out our alerts and things accordingly. Right. Again, I'm going to go back to the fact that it's the only way to observe host activity for items that you cannot put an agent on. So that includes those OT, IoT, bring your own device, as well as intra-network communications uh, from devices like routers and switches and things like that that you just can't throw an agent on. Um, the other thing is this can be deployed in an air-gapped type of environment. And what I mean by that is, when you think air-gapped, you might think, okay, it's completely off network. But what I wanted to is mention that you can deploy this off your network and still monitor your network, as Nadeem will show in some of his slides, and maybe we can point out together that the adversary doesn't even know that you have this. So there's no way for the adversary, if they don't know that you have it, they don't know they don't have an ability to be able to change data that might be flowing to or from it because it's not even in the path of what they're looking at. So really a nice way to handle that. Plus a bonus of this is you'll be able to do network hygiene, be able to see things like shadow IT or unauthorized access or security policy violations within your organization. So next slide. All right, I'm going to pass it over to Nadeem, where we're going to talk a little bit about the network visibility from his perspective. And take it away, Nadeem.
Thanks, Phil. Um, Excited to go into the network visibility part. So I'm going to start with the NDR, right? That's what we are talking about today. Network detection response as a mechanism to secure some of these networks, right? So I want to emphasize that have you ever noticed, right, what is the N in the NDR, right? And it's in the plain sight, right? So N in the NDR in the NDR is the network, right? So in our context, that is what implies network visibility. And in my view, this is the most important part of the NDR, right? This is where it all starts. So the threats you're gonna hunt are limited by the universe that you see, which is the network visibility, right? So it's as good as the network visibility you have is what the data you're gonna get to your NDR system, and hence that's where you're gonna look for the threats. Like as Phil pointed out, the network device is one of the leading source of threats these days. So you want to make sure that all of your strategic points in the network are being monitored and you're extracting the right data to feed into your NDR system. And as I'm saying here, it's garbage in is equal to garbage out. It's your NDR, your threat detection is as good as the data you feed to it. So with that, the next one. So what we do at NEOX is exactly that. We extract the network data to the purest form, which is the packet data, from these heterogeneous hybrid environment. Most of the large enterprises these days are hybrid cloud, multi-cloud. So data center, critical infrastructure, which is prime target, as Phil pointed out these days, and the high performance computing sites, clusters, and the hybrid cloud. Take that data, feed into the NDR tools like Stamus. And that's what drives the business continuity. Next. So I'm going to go into two scenarios, two ways you can extract, you can take this data out and how you feed into the NDR solution we are talking about today, right? The first one is what I call the vanilla or the old-fashioned or the classic model, right? Where basically you would start by mirroring the traffic that's going through the network. I like to use the word data in motion, as Phil pointed out. That's where those are your highways, and that's where you see all the data from the end device. So if you're tapping the strategic points in the network, north, south, east, west direction, you take it out, mirror it through a tapping mechanism versus span, which has a lot of issues. Feed it, bring it centrally to a packet broker, and that feed it from there to NDR solution like Stamus. Like that's one of the approach, right? So going to the next slide, how it works is, so for example, we have a bunch of different type of taps, right? We talked about, for example, air gaps and IT and OT sites, right? So we have taps that would basically maintain that gap between the two sites. The tap devices are where everything starts. And as Phil pointed out, These devices have no MAC address, no IP address, so the attacker doesn't know they are there, right? So they are extremely hard to be manipulated because unlike span, or which can make you take the control of the network device itself and opens up a whole set of new vulnerabilities, taps do not have that. And also they are permanent, and they copy the full duplex communication, so you have exact copy of the network data, and that's where it all starts. So you build that fundamental architecture, mirror every packet, bring it together in a central location, which we are showing here, for example, a two-tier architecture, which is generally recommended for mid to large enterprises, right? So we use our, for example, packet line series, which gives you 40 gig up to 400 gig, 1 to 400 gig, anywhere in between aggregation. And then you may or may not take it to a more advanced packet broker like Packet Wolf, where you turn on more advanced services. So these packet broker layer, that is critical before the NDR, because this offloads the tool from a lot of things and provides quote unquote packet services. And these packet services, I'm not going to go through all of them here. They're listed here and how they're split between the two tiers. Simple things such as filtering, packet slicing, deduplication, tagging, untagging, etc. So the tools have the network data in the form they want. Saves you a lot of cost because, such as, for example, deduplication will cut down a lot of expensive bandwidth utilization and will improve the ROI on the tools, right? And there are a bunch of other things we can go into details on some other day. So that's how this two-tier architecture works: tap, aggregate, feed, forward, whatever, filter and manipulate, provide the packet services. Next slide, please. And you can do the same in a virtualized environment, right? So if you're in cloud, multi-cloud, even on premises, east-west direction, a more efficient ways to deploy virtual taps and then bring it centrally through a virtual packet broker and turn on the features that you need before feeding to NDR system. Next, please. The scenario B is more involved, and this is more tightly integrated between NEOX and Stamus, right? This is where we use an NDR probe, in this case, which is called Packet Owl. And by the way, this is we can proudly say that, I think, on this webinar, that this is the only 100 gig solution available in the industry. So only 100 gig NDR at full performance, non-blocking, that you're going to get is Stamus and NEOX solution. So that's what Packet Owl provides here. And if you go to if you look on the right side of the triangle, you'll see a bunch of services that are a little bit different from packet brokering. So in this case, you obviously start with the tapping layer, but then you have the Packet Owl can play different roles, right? So some of those are not topic of today's webinar. For example, it runs Suricata as well, and can do signature-based stuff as well. But in this case, it's purely feeding as an NDR probe into Stamus, and you can have the selective packet capture as well. So you have the log data, you have the packet data, and you have the other capabilities that increase operational efficiency of the NDR server. So going to the next slide, please. Yeah, so in this case, typical tap feeding into the Packet Owl. You may have still a packet broker layer in the middle if it's a very large network and you want to have a consolidation and you want to have one or two packet brokers, and then from there you can feed into a Packet Owl to a packet broker. The Packet Owl will look just like a tool, and then from Packet Owl then you feed into a Stamus server, which Phil is going to talk about. Or if you have a reasonable size network, you can feed tabs directly into Packet Owl as well. So there's a lot of flexibility, and sky's the limit how you want to use this device. Going to the next one. And the virtual version, cloud as well. So there is a Packet Owl virtual, same way as you can deploy Packet Tiger virtual packet broker. You can also deploy this device with the virtual taps in cloud or in virtualized data centers. Next one, please. A couple of architectures. So this is just a bigger picture, how the architecture will look like for especially if we have any network engineers on the network architects or network engineers on the webinar. If you look from right to left, so you have typical spine leaf and you have a bunch of servers and apps running on them. That's your typical virtualized software-defined data center. You have our packet hawk inline bypass taps, north-south way, sitting next to firewalls. You can have our modular taps looking at the east-west traffic, feeding all that to the left where the visibility overlay architecture gets built into a packet line packet broker that aggregates it, feeding into then, packet owl NDR probe, and then into Stamus NDR server from where it goes to the SOC level where all the observability is happening. Next slide. And the same thing pretty much happens in the cloud. The only thing, I think I'm going to go to the next slide on the cloud use case. Right. So in this case, it's the same thing. Just like you don't have your own servers, so you crank up the instances and you do the retapping. If in for example Azure or other clouds, you still have challenges extracting packet data out. So we provide you all those mechanism, AWS, GCP as well. Bring it within VPC across the VPC, however you want to do it. And from there you can take it to Stamus and have a single pane of glass kind of monitoring. All right, so handing off, I think, back to Phil.
Excellent. Thanks, Nadeem. So I'm going to cover a little bit more about ClearNDR in particular here. So advanced threat detection utilizing ClearNDR. And basically, ClearNDR is an open and transparent network detection solution. Everything that I'm going to show you, I'm actually going to do a quick demo here in just a little bit. But this thing delivers actionable network results, visibility, powerful threat detection. It also can be provided, just as Nadeem was showing how NEOX can be provided in the cloud, public cloud, private cloud. All of these solutions are created as either hardware or virtual instances, so they can be deployed in most of your cloud instances and virtual environments as well. It combines anomalous activity detection. Some of the things that were mentioned by Nadeem with regards to PCAPs, we do conditional PCAP capturing. So if there's something that takes place, we can hold that PCAP for evidentiary purposes and pull those back as needed as you're doing an investigation. We can extract files from the network as well, and prioritize and categorize networking events. And this allows you to do tagging of network events as well as even full-blown threat hunting. So it gives you just a really greater visibility into the network activity, right? It's open and extensible, so I will show you. You can put this into integrate this into your current tech stack, whether that's a SIM, an EDR, SOAR, IR ticketing. We can explain how all of that is going to be happening on a slide coming up, I believe. And I did mention that this can also be air gapped, and by air gapped, it can be fully air gapped if that's the environment that you work in, but it can also be air gapped from the network so that it is hidden from the adversary. So next slide. So this slide here is where I was headed, is the fact that something that was mentioned by Nadeem. You'll notice there's a little red box, but basically we as Stamus, we're delivering software here that as appliances that can be virtual, in the cloud, or hybrid. And you'll notice Nadeem was talking about his packet owl. And what we've done here at Stamus is working with NEOX Networks. We've actually created our probe software and images to work within their packet owl appliances. And this is just a really awesome thing. And one of the reasons we're able to get to that 100 gig sizing that Nadeem was talking about before. So, and that's why we're here together talking to you. All of the data, the metadata that's coming off of these different networks, move into a central server called our Stamus or the Clear NDR central server, right? And again, everything can be on-prem or in the cloud, and we have integrations across the board. We can take our alerts, as I will talk about here in a little bit, declarations of compromises or policy violations, and utilize those to take response actions with other tools on your network. We also can integrate into IR ticketing or send our data into a data lake or SIM to allow you to have a single pane of glass in those locations if you'd like. So this is kind of a quick overview of how the deployment would look, and you could have all packet owls if you'd like from a pro perspective, or switch them up in different ways if that's how it's needed. Okay, next slide. So we have optimized our detection technologies, so we don't just rely on one detection technology. We do have multiple detection mechanisms that we're utilizing. And of course, as everyone is talking about now, there is some artificial intelligence and machine learning detection that helps with examples of zero-day type of threats, and anomaly detection to see things that that are anomalous on the network, and this also helps with command and control type of beacons, as well as communications that might be happening there. We don't hide from the fact that we actually use traditional signatures and indicators of compromises for our detections. These things pick up way more than you expect. Even though the adversary is getting smarter, they are still using some of the same old tried and true techniques. And because of that, these signatures really allow for an immediate return on investment when you deploy. You start to see things without having to work through a whole learning curve from an AI perspective. And these are good examples for these are known techniques and IOCs and CVEs that are happening from different adversaries or that have been announced. So you'll be able to see them, even go back in time and look and see if they've ever happened. And finally, there are also advanced heuristics and algorithmic detections for looking at things that might be we see something that should be plain text, but it's showing up in high entropy, or phishing that we're able to spot within the network. We also have the ability to look at newly registered domains as part of the IOC pieces as well. These are different pieces of threat intelligence that can be brought in. Something that I didn't mention on the previous slide is that we are pretty much threat intelligence agnostic from that aspect. Okay, next slide. So I mentioned declarations of compromise just a little bit ago, and basically what this is, as Mark likes to give me a hard time about, I call these pants on fire events. These are very serious and imminent threats that are happening on the network. These can be used to trigger full automated response, such as using an endpoint to quarantine, or kicking off a playbook and a SOAR, or setting a firewall rule to block access to things. So these can be used for fully automated response. And they virtually eliminate alert fatigue. The bottom line is you're trying not to have any declarations of compromises on the network. So when you do, you're handling them and working through them. And typically, there's a handful of these versus the potential thousands and thousands of alerts that the legacy IDS or legacy system might be generating for you. We've really gone through and worked on this data to make sure that it's actually going to be serious and imminent threats and not a bunch of false positives. So. We also have something that we call declarations of policy violations. Same concept, except it's for things that aren't necessarily threats, but fall in line with your security posture and give you ideas that there are things like clear text passwords flowing across the network, or maybe there's Tor traffic, even though your policies say that shouldn't be happening. Things like that can actually be seen. You have some rogue proxy servers on the network, or I identify these types of organizational specific policy violations with accuracy. And these can be used to potentially send a message to a message channel to to alert someone, hey, we've seen some activity of some clear text passwords being delivered on this device. You might want to go take a look at it, right? So declarations of compromise, what those mean are a threat on an asset, and no matter how many events might fire for that, it's a threat on an asset. Whereas the declarations of policy violations are you have a policy violation on an asset, and those could be anything from a few that we've generated, as well as some that you have created as well from an organizational specific perspective. Okay. One example, just to give you an idea from a scalability perspective, and this one's only 10 gigabits, and now with the help of NEOX, we can get to 100 gigabits per second. We were actually monitoring the data center where we run, and you'll notice that in 1 week we had untold persons. We had over at 10 gigabits, we had over 780,000 to 1 million events per second that were actually being processed inside the probe. These were, being generated and being processed and sent off to be determined: are they declarations of compromises? Are they policy violations? Are they events that need to be used for hunting or anything like that? And you'll notice there were 16 billion events. Over 37 million hosts and endpoints were identified, and that brought us to we ended up having 28 threats in this data center with 95 impacted assets, 8 different tunneling techniques, and 10 potential beacons. Those numbers are much smaller and much easier to handle from a SOC perspective than those billions of security events that you may be dealing with today. So just lots of hours saved. All right, Nadeem and I think we're going to talk a little bit about the structure of us together and the power of the partnership. So let's move on, and I will speak to a little bit of the clear NDR pieces of this, and let Nadeem talk about the NEOX pieces. So if we talk from the bottom up, I will let NEOX and Nadeem, go ahead and get started here, and then we'll start talking about the probes and the pieces up at the top. So
Sure. Yeah. So what we're showing here is really, left and right. You can see usually how you have a redundant data center architecture, and you start with tapping. So those are taps that when you see packet ravens, and we love birds and animals. So packet raven or packet or packet hawk. Those are generally most of our taps of different type. It's the same thing that I illustrated earlier. Feed into a central packet broker, whether that be packet tiger, packet lion, can be from there into a packet owl series, which is the central piece here, right? And then from there it goes into NEOX infrastructure.
yeah, so then it goes into the clear NDR parts of the infrastructure, right, where we're doing all of our processing. Something that hasn't really been mentioned. There's a lot of processing that happens right on the probe. So being able to get to that 100 gigabits per second for a single probe, took a lot of effort and a lot of help from the NEOX guys to make that happen. So that's awesome. And we're able to do 1, 10, 40 gig types of speeds all into a single Stamus central server where everything is happening, and all of our detection capabilities are ballooned up for the SOC analysts, so that they can utilize that for action-based intelligence, even being able to pull some of the evidence, like I've mentioned before, PCAPs and files that are also being saved. It's also completely scalable, right? Which means you can do this at a very small location, right? With a single probe, a single central server, or a packet owl, with some taps going into it, and all the way up to some of the diagrams that Nadeem showed, with being able to do multi-segments and all of those things as well. So, okay, I just think just wanted to say that it's been a great partnership with NEOX as we've been moving forward with this. So. All right. I guess it's my turn to actually show our product really quickly. So I believe you have to stop sharing. Yes, thank you. Before I can actually share. So let's make sure that that's working here. Hopefully everybody can see my screen. Is that can you give me a not a thumbs up because I can't see your faces, but if you okay. There
Yes,
it is.
it's good.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much. All right. So this, you've seen kind of screenshots of this page a couple of times, and I'm going to make this really quickly because we, have a little bit more that we want to talk about as well. But I just want to dive into what we've been talking about from a declarations of compromise and declarations of policy violations. This is our operational center where you're able to see some network activity information. So the amount of analyzed traffic that's been brought to us from the NEOX infrastructure, and then how many transactions or events that we actually created from that data, as well as those declarations of compromise. We do discover, all the hosts that are on the network, and I can look at internal, external, or all of them. This is a view of the internal hosts for this demo environment. But the real key here is these declarations of compromises and the assets under attack, the cybersecurity kill chain. We will plot them on the cybersecurity kill chain, the assets, as we see declarations of compromises taking place. And so those get plotted based off of those declarations of compromise. And in this case, I have 44 compromises that are 25 impacted assets and 9 active threats. So something that I can actually look at. There is a nodal diagram that I can dive deeper into if I'd like to see it, and actually click on items to dive deeper to get more detail around a particular threat or particular item. We can see Cobalt Strike is here. But what really is key from this perspective is the ability to move into the impacted assets, see all of the assets that are associated, as well as get a timeline of events. So if I move into this timeline, I'm actually able to see a Gantt chart that is going to show me visually how this took place, what happened, and how this entire attack took place, and get me to patient 0 very quickly, which you can see is this particular IP address of 10.44.65.43, and any lateral movement that is taking place between other devices or assets on my network and what threats were implicated in this movement. So if I click the threats area, I actually get this timeline in a date timestamp perspective, and I'm able to walk right through here. So in like 2 clicks, I'm able to get a really good visualization of what's going on, where this started, who kicked it off, which asset kicked it off, and really have a good idea of how to start going about remediating things. If I also click the IP address, I'm able to get to the going back to the impacted asset, clicking the IP address of one of these, I'm actually able to see real detail inside of here of what's going on with descriptions of how those things are impacted. I see evidentiary, even the offender infrastructure within the system. I'm also able to drill in deeply to the particular threat itself, the asset itself, and really dive into a good snapshot of all the data that's available to me. So this data comes to us from machine learning, from the detection methods would be from signatures, anomaly detection. All of that is displayed right here on this particular screen of the UI. So real quickly, 2 clicks, and I'm able to dive into right where I need to be to see the bad guys and what's going on in my network. And again, the goal here is to have an operational center that has zero numbers across the declarations of compromises. The policy violations, you can see some of those that have come into play as well. So potential data leakage, we're able to see some LLM&R that's going on the network. If I pull back to the Explore section of our UI, I can see that I have some clear text passwords, I believe, in here as well somewhere. Not this one. Yeah, there's a clear text password right here. So I can see that those things are popping up and showing me. So with that, that's my 5-minute demo. I'm going to stop sharing here really quickly so we can get back over to the slides and keep moving forward. All right. I think Nadeem, you're up.
All right, so next one. Let's talk about, so thanks, Phil. That was a great demo, by the way, very impressive. So when you look at the deployment strategy, right? As I said, it's a 4-step process. So if you're a security architect, security operations person, working with your network team in this NetSecOps collaboration, you would generally start, working with your network counterpart by determining what are the points, strategic points in your network. And this could be not just the physical infrastructure or just how many data centers you have, distributed branch offices, maybe, cell sites. It could be also cloud and multi-cloud environments. So you basically map it out and see, okay, what are the strategic points and also the interconnecting links that you need to tap. What is the north-south traffic you want to monitor, or east-west, whatever. And then you would basically start from there and work with us on determining how many taps, what kind of taps, fiber, copper, hybrid, etc. you would need. Next step involves putting the central piece, which is basically whether it's a brokering layer or it's the NDR probe, right? In this case, it would be NDR probe or brokering before that in step 1 as well. If it is too much traffic you're aggregating, a packet broker becomes almost a necessity. And because that makes your life so easy, reduces the blind spots, and you have a central point where you can manage all of your network traffic. From there, you can feed into the NDR and other tools as well. So it's a great ROI. And then the NDR probe acts as the heart of the central point of the NDR foundation layer from the network perspective. And from there it goes to into the Stamus system, which is the step 3, right? And Phil, you can maybe talk about this one.
Yeah, so in this side of things, having everything configured from NEOX and all of the packet data coming in through the Packet Owl, the NDR probe deployment, this is where the data ends up being stored in a central database, all of that metadata. I do want to point out that PCAPs and files do not get stored there. As one of the previous slides, the triangle showed that there were PCAPs and files that are stored that would be stored at the probe level. But all of the metadata gets stored up here on this particular area. This is also where all the configuration takes place, where you have the ability from the user interface to build out your automated response capabilities and also manage and maintain all of the probes that are deployed across the network, whether those are Stamus probes or NEOX Packet Owl probes. All of those are handled all the way across the network within this single UI from an administration perspective. So, and then we would work with you to build out some, based off of your network environment, what best practices would be good for you over and above the things that come right out of the box.
Okay, so the from the network foundational layer, what are some of the best practices we recommend? As I mentioned, it's pretty much a recap. Pick the strategic locations of the network. People think taps are could be expensive. Actually, these days taps are not expensive. And if you are calculating the total cost of ownership perspective, truck rolls, and a bunch of other things to factor in, they make your life really easy because you set up once. As I say, network visibility is not really product, it's a practice. You have to think long term. And if you consider the cost of the breaches and the network, the business downtime these days, it's peanuts, right? So it saves you a lot in the long run when you establish this kind of architecture, Stamus and us together. It pays off in a big way. So think about how many taps you need, how many strategic points will work with you generally on an architectural proposal. A modular bypass portable, start with that. No span. We definitely, one thing, if you want to take away one thing when you're building a network visibility architecture, avoid span at all cost, right? And there are a bunch of details there. Second, then, consolidate the traffic. That's another, thought perspective. Bring your network traffic into a central location, at least a couple of them, where as a network engineer, you can see what is happening to your network traffic, right? All the IP addresses and everybody that's going through. So you have that central zoom in information. And that is generally what Packet Broker does. And step three is then once you have very clean view of your network traffic, you have no blind spots, because blind spot is what attacker is going to exploit. Then you feed it into an NDR probe, and that's where as we talked about NDR probe, then from there it goes into Stamus, and then all the magic happens.
Excellent. I like all the magic happens.
All right. Well, thank you, gentlemen. Just wanted to recap a couple of the takeaways from this conversation. And you heard Nadeem really, I think, in his best practices that he just reviewed, focused a lot on getting that complete network visibility foundation solid. And we talked about no span, no mirror ports, and the real, there's so many reasons for that. Not the least of which is those deployments drop packets, so you don't really get all the visibility. And then, of course, scalability is another really important reason to do that and build that foundation on taps and network packet brokers and aggregation systems, all to get that foundation settled in one or two or three, points in your network. And real-time threat detection can be performed and can be delivered through clear NDR. These probes do the real detection, and then the additional analytics and the transparent results are shared and explained in that clear NDR central server interface that Phil showed us earlier. This whole thing runs at enterprise scale. We've talked several times today about the multiple 100 gigabit per second probes deployed in enterprise networks, and scales from 100 megabits per second network connections all the way up to multiple 100 gig network connections. The system, we didn't really talk much about this, but the clear NDR is deployed around the world, and it's deployed in some of the largest financial institutions in the world, for example, central banks and that sort of thing. So proven out in the field and integrated in with the enterprise stack in all cases. So with that, really, I'll move to the Q&A. I think we've had a couple of questions come in. I just want to make sure that I'm seeing the latest. Yep. Okay. Okay, great. Here's one that came in, and I think this would be best for Phil. Here we go. So what is the typical implementation timeline for deploying clear NDR in a large enterprise environment where there's an existing SIM and EDR tool?
Got it.
And
Yeah, and
there's a follow-on. I'll just add this in there because I think you could probably answer it together. Do you have any specific integration guides for platforms like Splunk and CrowdStrike?
got it.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm actually I think I can answer some of this, and I think Nadeem can also help answer some of this. We are the NDR company, so typically we would get in place after Nadeem does his magic with NEOX on getting all of the packets ready to us over to us. But on the NDR side, after that piece is done, it's typically within a few days. In a large enterprise, we can be up and running within actually a few days once we know that we're getting the data. So that really it really where it becomes, I don't know, maybe not, I'm not going to say a bottleneck. It's more of just finding where you need to tap and making sure that we're in getting all the data that's necessary. So Nadeem, do you have maybe a rough idea on that from a large organization perspective? And I'll come back to that other question, Mark.
Right. So I will a little bit up level, and because some of these customers we have, they don't allow us to name them, obviously. But as you pointed out rightly in the direction, big financials, for example, highly regulated industries is the one that
Mhm.
generally have deployed, and some of those vendors that you mentioned, Mark, are where what we see pretty much everywhere. So it's a very common use case actually with Splunk and other folks being generally the security teams already have tools from pretty much everybody, right? All the usual suspects, and we get deployed together in the middle of it, right? So you
Mhm.
always have to interoperate with those devices. So that's a very common use case. We just actually in the process of shipping and to a customer, big financial on the East Coast, and that is exactly kind of the use case.
Yeah, and so from an integration perspective, from a clear NDR idea, we can ship data with standard protocols, syslog, JSON, typical standard protocols to pretty much any data lake or SIEM, including Splunk. We do also offer a Splunk application that can be installed in a Splunk instance that gives you a lot of the UI elements that I showed in our UI right in a Splunk dashboard. Um, we also have built-in integrations for things like EDR, your big name EDRs like Sentinel-1 and CrowdStrike, for instance, where we can do things like contain a machine that was impacted. So from an integration perspective, we can pretty much cover most items from an integration piece. So
Okay, I've got another one. This one's about packet brokers. I'm familiar with other packet brokers on the market, but this is the first time I've heard of NEOX networks. How does NEOX compare to some of the other, shall I say, well-known packet brokers in terms of packet drops and the licensing model? Nadeem, I guess this one's for you.
My favorite question. Yeah, so yeah, now you do know about NEOX. So we actually have commonly replaced some of those well-known packet brokers, and some of the key differentiators are, for example, one of the top reasons to replace some of those vendors with our packet brokers is fundamentally the reason I started my slides with, which was the N into NDR and how important that foundational layer is in the visibility layer is for the threat detection. So if you're dropping packets, because some of those packet brokers have central architectures where you have to buy certain quote unquote modules for central processing, and you trade off your port densities or your CPU or whatever ASIC power. So you at some stage you start dropping the packets, especially in demanding high-end use cases. Like in our case, we are talking about 100, although we can do 10 gig, 25 gig, 40 gig, all things in with clear NDR, but 100 gig, for example, most of the enterprises have moved to 100 gig for a long time now. And so that's where you start seeing the issues, right? That's where you see the packet drop issues. So we don't have those kind of issues. What you see is what you get. And the second thing is the licensing. We also do not have licensing for, remember all those circles I showed, whether it's deduplication, packet slicing, flow export, all those features, tons of features or packet services you get with the packet brokers. Those are basically free of cost that come out with our packet brokers. So cost, TCO wise, and reliability and having the zero blind spots are some of the key differences between our packet brokers and those major ones. Hopefully that helps.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Nadeem. I think there's another one here that might apply to you as well. Can the 100 gig NDR probe also support 40 gig?
Absolutely. As mentioned, so we go, as you can do 10 gig, 25 gig, 40 gig, 100 gig. It's all those are available with clear NDR and another probe as well. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Great. Um, so here's another question. There were many references to cloud deployments. Is the Clear NDR a SaaS application? I guess that would be for you, Phil.
Yeah. So currently the Clear NDR is not a SaaS application, but we do have MSSPs and things that are utilizing it. So if you need it to be hosted in the cloud, we do have some folks that might be able to help from that perspective. But keep in mind, we spend a lot of time uh, making sure that you have complete sovereignty of your data. So that means you can deploy where you want to deploy that central server. And while we're not a SaaS and managing that piece for you, what you would be able to do that in your environment, whether that's a public cloud, private cloud, on-prem, or air-gapped, right? I mean, we really take into account the whole data sovereignty piece. As a matter of fact, we don't send any data off of our appliances, um, even for doing some of the AI things that we talked about already. We want you to have complete sovereignty of your data.
Okay. There's another question that I believe you probably answered during the talk, so maybe it's duplicate. But Nadeem, does NEOX offer uh, taps or packet brokers for cloud environments like AWS or Google Cloud?
Yes, we do for all three of those.
So I think you covered that, but I just wanted to make sure that you got a chance to answer that. Um, okay, well, I think we are all caught up on questions, unless there's any more that people want to ask. All right, well, let me just move on to the additional resources. Thank you, Nadeem and Phil, for answering those questions.
Mhm.
You will get this presentation, so you don't have to copy anything down. But we've got a couple of solution briefs on this NEOX and Stamus Networks solution. And then we've got a data sheet here on the Clear NDR. And there's also material on all of the NEOX products that you can get on the NEOX website. And Stamus Networks has a resource library with tons of material, white papers and videos and tech briefs and that sort of thing. So I'll leave this up for just a second. If you want to take a snap, you can, or you can just wait until we send you the presentation. And with that, I'd just like to say thank you to all of our guests and thank you to our presenters, Nadeem and Phil.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you all.